It's Monday, September 24th, and I thought I'd give you an update as to what happened this weekend. On Friday, I left for Morgan to North Carolina to do a Mad Live event on Saturday, and I stopped at the Golden Corral to have dinner. Ended up with a guy named Drew, who was going to be clearing my table for me and getting anything I needed, and asked him for a prayer request, and he gave me a prayer request, and I prayed for him and his request. And at the end, I ended up giving him a Gospel of John with the plan of salvation in the front with a nice personal note and a tip, and he was so appreciative of that. Saturday morning, I got up and I went to Cracker Barrel for breakfast, had a waitress named Jessie, and I was able to get a prayer request from her, pray for her request, left her a Gospel of John with the plan of salvation in the front and a nice personal note to her. And then I was on my way, when I went to the church, I should say, we only had like 1 or 2 people show up, so the pastor said he was very embarrassed, but he said, let's just postpone it. So he and I fellowshiped for about 2.5 hours, and then I headed to Lynchburg, where I was going to be having a training on Sunday. On the way to Lynchburg, I stopped at the Sheets place in Greensboro to get gas, and I saw a police officer gassing up as well, so I went over, introduced myself to him, told him I was a police officer in New Jersey on a SWAT team, and asked if I could share something with him and pray for his safety and his eternal salvation. And he said he seemed a little cautious, wasn't really sure, but he warmed up pretty quickly. His name was Brad, and ended up putting my hand on his shoulder, prayed for him. We ended up having a nice conversation, and I gave him one of my police gospel cards. Headed over to Lynchburg, and in Lynchburg that night, I went to Texas Roadhouse, had a waitress named Erica, and was able to get a prayer request from her, share the gospel with her, gave her a Gospel of John with the plan of salvation in the front and a nice note, and ended up spending the night before my training the next day. On Sunday morning, I got up and went to Cracker Barrel again, and had a server named Aaron, was able to share the gospel with him, get a prayer request, pray for him, and left him a good tip. And while I was waiting for my breakfast to come in the Cracker Barrel, an older gentleman with a Navy hat came in and sat down behind me. And he obviously served on a ship in the Navy because it had the ship's name and number on it and everything. So I happen to have a custom-covered Gospel of John, with camouflage cover, I should say. And I pulled that out, I wrote him a nice note, and I went over and shook his hand and thanked him for his service and shared the gospel with him. Then I headed to the, getting ready to go to the church, and I pulled into Sheets gas station to pick something up, and there was a police officer sitting there having a breakfast sandwich. So I went over to him, introduced myself to him. His name was James. I asked if I could share something with him and pray for his safety and eternal salvation. He said, go for it, man. So I reached in the door, put my hand on his shoulder, and I prayed for him. And he was really grateful. I mean, he really appreciated that. Gave him one of my police gospel cards. And then I went in the store, made my purchase, came out, and he was just leaving. He gave me a big wave as he was leaving and smiled and said thank you. And did my training in Lynchburg at the Berean Baptist Church. We trained 60 people, and praise God, one person got saved at the training. And I headed home, stopped at McAdoo's in Christiansburg, Virginia for dinner, got a waitress named Josette, and asked her how I could pray for her, and she gave me a prayer request, and she wanted to stay and hear me pray, and I said, that's fine. So she stayed. I prayed for her and her request, ended up leaving her a Gospel of John with a personal note and a great tip. And so it was a good weekend ministry-wise, and we'll see what the Lord's got planned for this week.